All right, today we're going to peel back the layers of history, art, and scripture to really meet the people behind some of the most famous names in the world, the 12 disciples of Jesus.
I mean, just think about this for a second. This wasn't some all-star team of scholars or elites. We're talking about fishermen, a tax collector who everyone hated, and even a political radical. So how in the world did this kind of random group of regular guys become the foundation for a movement that literally changed the world? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into.
So, here's how we're going to break it down. We're going to look at them in a few small groups to really get a feel for their personalities and their roles. We'll start with how they were called, then zoom in on the inner circle, meet the guys who connected people and asked the tough questions, look at some really unexpected pairings, give a nod to the quiet ones, and finally, tackle the tough story of betrayal and what came next.
Okay, so first things first. The story of the disciples, at its heart, is about ordinary people being called to do something absolutely extraordinary. We're trying to look past the figures you see in stained glass windows and meet the actual, real human beings.
You know how every group kind of has its core? For the disciples, it was Peter, James, and John. These were the three who got invited into the most intense, most private, most profound moments of Jesus' ministry. They were, without a doubt, the inner circle. Let's kick things off with the one everybody knows. Simon, a fisherman from Galilee. Jesus gave him this new name, Peter, which means rock, and told him he'd be the foundation of the church. But as we're about to see, this rock was actually full of cracks.
Peter was just all in. He was impulsive, he was passionate, and he was the very first one to declare that Jesus was the Messiah. But he was also so human. He's the same guy who famously denied even knowing Jesus 3 times. But here's the crucial part. His story doesn't end there in failure. He was restored, and he became this incredible leader, showing that true strength often comes from overcoming our biggest weaknesses. The tradition is that he was crucified upside down because he felt he wasn't worthy to die the same way Jesus did. His journey is just remarkable.
Next up are 2 brothers, James and John. And you gotta love the nickname Jesus gave them, the Sons of Thunder. I mean, that tells you pretty much everything you need to know about their personalities, right? Fiery, passionate, maybe even a little hot-headed. There was a time they seriously asked Jesus if they should call down fire from heaven to wipe out a village that rejected them. What's so fascinating is how their paths ended up being so different. James, one of the Sons of Thunder, became the very first apostle to be killed for his faith. His brother John, on the other hand, outlived every single one of them. He's known as the beloved disciple, the one who stood right there at the cross and was told to take care of Jesus' mother, Mary. He went on to write a huge chunk of the New Testament, and tradition says, was the only one to die of old age. A pretty stark contrast for the 2 Sons of Thunder.
All right, let's move on to our next group. These are the guys who are the crucial links in the chain, the ones who are always bringing people together, and the ones whose questions really helped move the whole story forward.
Every movement needs people who are natural connectors, right? That was Andrew and Philip. Andrew was actually Peter's brother, and he was the first disciple to follow Jesus. The very first thing he did was run and find Peter and say, "You have to meet this guy." It was the same with Philip. As soon as he was called, his first instinct was to go find his friend Nathanael. They were always the bridge, connecting other people to Jesus.
So, let's talk about that friend Philip went to find, Bartholomew, who most people agree is the same guy called Nathanael in the Gospel of John. And Nathanael's first reaction was, well, let's just say it was pure, unvarnished skepticism. I just love this line. It is so brutally honest. Nazareth was this tiny, little backwater town, and Nathanael just said what everyone was probably thinking. But what's great is that his skepticism just melted away the second he met Jesus. His honest doubt gave way to this incredibly powerful declaration of faith.
And hey, speaking of doubt, we have to talk about Thomas. For centuries, this poor guy has been stuck with the nickname Doubting Thomas, but that is such an incomplete picture. Yeah, okay, he demanded to see and touch the resurrected Jesus for himself. But let's not forget that earlier, when Jesus was heading into a dangerous area, it was Thomas who said, "Let's go too, so we can die with him." The man was loyal and courageous, not just a skeptic.
And when Thomas finally saw the risen Jesus, his doubt didn't just disappear, it completely transformed into one of the most powerful statements of faith in the entire Bible, "My Lord and my God." It's the clearest confession of Jesus' divinity in the Gospels, and it came from the man who dared to question. Now for what I think is one of the most radical, mind-blowing parts of this whole group. Among the 12 were 2 men who, in any other situation, would have been mortal enemies. It just shows how revolutionary this new community really was.
Okay, get this. On one side, you've got Matthew, As a tax collector, he worked for Rome, the occupying enemy. His own people saw him as a traitor, a sellout. Then on the other side, you have Simon the Zealot. The Zealots were fiery revolutionaries dedicated to overthrowing Roman rule, probably with violence. So you have a Roman collaborator and an anti-Roman freedom fighter sitting at the same table, following the same leader. I mean, that is an absolutely incredible picture of a community that could overcome the deepest political divides you can imagine.
You know, not every disciple has some big, dramatic story. A few of them are really just names on a list, but their presence is just as important, representing this legacy of quiet, steady, loyal faith.
We really don't know much about James, the son of Alphaeus, or Thaddeus, who was also called Jude. Their legacy isn't found in big speeches or famous miracles. It's found in their constant, loyal presence. And that's a powerful reminder, isn't it? That making an impact isn't always about being the loudest person in the room. Sometimes the greatest strength is just showing up, day in and day out.
But, of course, no story of the 12 disciples is complete without facing the biggest tragedy of all, the betrayal that came from within the group. It was their greatest crisis, but it also led to a moment where they had to restore and reaffirm their mission.
And that brings us to Judas Iscariot. His story is, without a doubt, one of the most tragic in all of human history. Here was a man who was one of the chosen 12, who was trusted with the group's money, and who, in the end, made a choice that has made his name infamous forever.
For 30 pieces of silver, Judas led the authorities to Jesus, using a kiss, a sign of friendship, as the signal for betrayal. It's just chilling. But the story gets even sadder. Overwhelmed by remorse for what he'd done, Judas met a tragic end. His story is this permanent cautionary tale about how you can be so close to the light and still choose darkness.
So with Judas gone, the group was down to 11, and the number 12 was a huge deal. It was deeply symbolic. It represented the 12 tribes of Israel, the restoration of God's people. For the remaining disciples, it was absolutely essential to restore that number, to show the world that the mission was not broken, that it would continue.
And so, they chose a successor, a man named Matthias. He'd been a follower from the very beginning, and he was chosen to take Judas's place. And his selection is so significant because it's this powerful declaration that despite catastrophic failure, despite betrayal from within their own ranks, the mission was not going to be derailed. The work would go on.
So we end right back where we started, a group of fishermen, tax collectors, skeptics, and revolutionaries. They were passionate and flawed, brave and cowardly, all at the same time. They were ordinary people called to an extraordinary task. Their story, so full of both failure and incredible triumph, leaves us with a question that still echoes today. What does it mean for us, for imperfect people, to be called to a great purpose?